states, by and large, already embrace the idea that they need to have at least 37% green climate and 20% digital. And I think I'm really encouraged by the fact that member states actively promote this and actively come up with projects that go in that direction. The only thing I want to encourage all member states, not just Portugal, is to pay a special attention to cross-border projects, real European projects, so that we also show that this is a European effort that benefits many member states, not just individual member states, but many member states collectively.
Using the Euro brand. Is this?
Yes, I think this is something where we can show to our citizens that Europe has added value. Europe has added value for their jobs, for the environment, for improving biodiversity, for making a better agriculture. Europe has added value.
You believe that with this pandemic situation, people engage more with these issues about green problems and green economy and green situation?
Well, first of all, people, of course, worry most about their health and about their loved ones and about their jobs right now. Rightly so. We all have that feeling. But at the same time, people do understand that there's something wrong with our relationship with our natural environment, because the pandemic is also a result of the fact that we don't live in balance with Mother Earth. So we need to rebalance. We need to live healthier lives. We need to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. We need to have a more natural relationship with our natural environment. We need to stop biodiversity from being affected too much. You know, we risk losing 1 million species if we don't change our ways. And there is a lot of feeling in the population in Europe, hey, I want to change this. And also people who live in cities, they've seen during the pandemic with the lockdowns that they have cities with clean air, that they can move around the city and breathe, that the atmosphere is better. And they want that also when the economy is coming back. So it gives us really a chance to transform our transport systems in cities, to go for zero emission public transport, etc., because people want it more than ever before.
Our panel is about the future of Europe is green. How can Europe work together with other regions of the world to reach this goal that we want all to the world?
Well, the interesting thing is that, you know, we've been leading this, but, you know, leading something and then nobody following usually doesn't work very well or not very long. But the encouraging thing is that China has now said they will be carbon neutral by 2060, and they're coming up with plans for that. Japan has said they'd be climate neutral by 2050. South Korea has said the same thing. The United States is back on the stage. Joe Biden said that one of the first things he'll do is rejoin the Paris Agreement. And John Kerry, who will be my direct colleague in all of this, will work with us very closely to make that a success. So internationally, the movement is getting going. But, and I really want to emphasize this, if we want the green side to work well, what I would like to call the red side should also work well. This green transition will only work if it's a social transition as well, if we make sure that we leave no one behind. I think this is a crucial element, because the sooner people get the impression that this is just for the rich, or for the young people who can afford it and not for them, it will not happen. And we would just betray our fundamental values if we leave people behind in this. So leaving no one behind is a crucial, decisive factor whether this is a success or not. And technology will play a crucial role in this, because technology, it's complicated, but it should make life simple. And it should lower the threshold for people to learn new skills so that they can be part of the new economy. So let's make a crucial element here, leave no one behind.
What has changed with the pandemic situation, and what can we learn from this?
Well, what has really changed is that we've been put in touch with our collective vulnerability. The second thing that has changed is that we see that we are stronger when we act together as Europeans. You know, at the beginning, many member states went it on their own. They said, we know best what to do for us. And they didn't even exchange information. And if you compare that situation with where we are now, you know, if you compare March or April with December, then I have to say that the collective understanding that as Europeans, if we act together, we're more successful, has grown. The buy-in of vaccines, for instance, at the European level is a great success. And it would not have been such a success if individual member states would have gone around doing this. And of course, the most important expression of the solidarity were the decisions in July on a European response to the crisis, creating the possibility of having European grants and European loans.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Mr. Timmermans. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And now back to the Web Summit in Lisbon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. You cannot come to Portugal this year for the Web Summit, so I'm bringing a bit of Lisbon wonderful views to you. At Siemens, we are very proud to be a long-time partner of the Web Summit, this year even with more excitement. Don't miss the chance to watch our incredible speakers talking about how the people at Siemens transform the everyday of cities, transportation and industries, and how we create value on a sustainable and diverse way. Be part of our journey.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now dwell on my specialty. No, not chocolate cake, but investments. Sorry. Some investments take years to make, that we know. But even while the ink is drying on the deal, CEO-investor relationships are being formed and cultivated to produce long-term success. Let us hear from the absolute experts in a discussion moderated by Melody Ham, Quizlet, CEO Matthew Glotz-Bach, and the co-founder of Union Square Ventures, Fred Wilson, shared the journey of their relationship. Enjoy.
Investments are part art and part science, and the relationship between chief executive and investor is carved out along the way. Top venture capitalist Fred Wilson of Union Square Ventures and Quizlet CEO Matt Glotz-Bach are here to tell us about their journey together in building companies. So let's get straight to it. Some context here. Quizlet, of course, allows users to create study tools like interactive flashcards, tests, and games, and it's a very collaborative process. Quizlet founder Andrew Sutherland was CEO until he left the company about 4 years ago. There was a pretty epic video together, Andrew, with you, Matt, and it was pretty interesting to see the passing of the baton. At the time, at the Series A round, Fred, you know, you actually helped lead the company's 12 million Series A round in 2015. You did join Quizlet's board at the time. And at the time, of course, the company was already profitable. So that's some context on the business itself. I want to start with you. Let's get to you, Matt. How was that transition tool? You know, you already had Fred Wilson on the board of Quizlet. Of course, this is about the dynamic between investor and CEO, but you were not the founder. Was that sort of a rocky start? Tell me about the challenges and perhaps the triumphs in that initial stage of the journey.
Yeah, thanks, Melody. I wouldn't say a rocky start by any means. Well, from my perspective, you'll have to ask Fred from his side. But it was my first time, or is my first time in the CEO seat. So I had worked at a number of tech companies, larger companies like YouTube and Google. And you know, I remember a conversation I had with Fred during the interview process where I said to Fred, "Hey, are you ready to take a bet on a first-time CEO? You know, and will you be there for me to help me, you know, figure out what this job is?" And he graciously said yes at the time, and you know, 4.5 years later has definitely followed through on that. So it wasn't rocky. There was definitely some, you know, I'd say I tried to tread carefully coming in, recognizing that I wasn't the founder. I hadn't, you know, built the company to the great set of successes they were already having, and wanting to be really respectful of that. But you know, but also still wanting to dive in and get right to work.
And Fred, you know, you are a seasoned veteran, very well respected in your industry. When you think about first interacting with Matt, can you tell us how that relationship first started? Were you part of the interviewing process? Would love to hear some context there.
Yeah, Matt and I met, we met at SFO, right? Is that right? Right. Yeah. So, and I live on the East Coast, and I was on one of my many trips to the Bay Area, and I think we met maybe like at a hotel at SFO or something. I can't exactly remember, but in any case, yes, I was part of the interviewing process, and I also knew some people who had worked with Matt at Google, and we had gotten, I had gotten from people I know well, like really, really good references. So I felt like for sure he was the right person to lead Quizlet through its next stage of growth. And, my thing for Matt was, you're going to be great at running the company. The things that you're going to need some help with are managing a board, raising capital, those sorts of things that, he hadn't had a chance to do while he was at Google. He's done all those now, and now a veteran of those things. But I felt like we owed it to him to support him a lot through that, and I think we have.
And Fred, you work with so many different entrepreneurs, so many CEOs. If you were to describe your relationship with Matt, let's say in 2 or 3 words, what sort of come to mind? What does the dynamic actually look like?
Well, Matt's a good operator, and Matt's done this job, most of this job, for quite a while now. So he knows how to lead an organization, set priorities, allocate resources, hire, develop people, groom people. So all of that he's really, really good at. And not every CEO that I work with has that experience. And so sometimes the younger CEOs need different support. With Matt, a lot of it is sort of get out of the way on the day-to-day and really focus on sort of the higher level stuff where he and the team can sometimes use some help on strategy, or, are we ready to do this next big thing? Those kinds of questions is where I really try to focus with Matt and the team, because I'm pretty sure that they know what they're doing on the day-to-day stuff. And well, I know for sure they know what they're doing on the day-to-day stuff.
Matt, same question to you. When you think about, you were nodding as Fred was speaking, are those sort of the same feelings and sentiments that come to mind when you think about your relationship with Fred?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Fred is, as you said, a veteran, has been doing this a long time. And so he brings the wisdom of both experience and breadth. He's got to sit in Fred, dozens of boardrooms along the way and been part of those bigger picture strategic conversations. Whereas, as I said, this is my first go at it. On the operating experience side, I joked about a year in, I can't imagine anybody doing this CEO job, when in their 20s or 30s. Like I'm thankful that I've got a few decades of experience to apply, because it's a really hard job. But having Fred's kind of wisdom and breadth of experience has been tremendous.
And it's a very meta point you make, because I think Andrew was 15 years old when he founded Quizlet. So if you're talking about, never mind 20s or 30s, in the teens, we're discussing this entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, one of the things that I find particularly interesting during this coronavirus pandemic, of course, is how communication has changed, perhaps, and evolved. Fred, you mentioned you are based on the East Coast. How has communication been with folks like Matt during this period of time? Do you feel like you're reaching out more? Do you feel like there are more sorts of lines of chit chat, perhaps now than, let's say, in February of this year?
Well, there was that moment when everything changed in terms of work from home and schools getting closed, and Quizlet's in the education business. So there was a period in March and April where Matt and the team were really trying to figure out how their business was changing. And we talked a lot as a board, so some of the communication was leadership team and board talking. There was more frequent emails, check-ins. But then I think once we kind of figured out what the new reality was, it has gone mostly back to the same cadence and the same approach. The one thing that's unfortunate is the board meetings have been like this over Zoom, right? So we're not all in the same room anymore, which is definitely, you lose something. I wouldn't say that the board meetings have gotten worse, because they haven't. I think in some ways the board meetings serve their purpose just as well as always, but that chemistry and camaraderie and good warm feelings that you have for each other, like Zoom just doesn't do that, right? Like you just can't get that. And even like just bringing in muffins in the morning and all, having coffee and muffins together, it seems like such a silly little thing, but it isn't. Like it actually contributes to a feeling of all in it together. And so that's what we miss. I miss, and I'm sure you do too, Matt, right?
Yeah, I mean, Fred, carbs are the great
Indeed. Yeah,
uniter, so
absolutely.
I definitely miss being able to congregate in the snack room and just meeting with colleagues. To that point, Matt, when you think about your dynamic, do you feel like you can reach out more often, more frequently? Does it feel like the communication or maybe the flexibility of meetings has been a net benefit for you during this time when you think about meeting with folks like Fred?
You know, I think Fred described it well. As there's been a, you know, it's been a bit of an evolution of when, you know, when it felt like the whole world was imploding in March and April. You know, everyone knew that everyone else was going through a lot, and so you know, Fred and the other members of the Quizlet board were sort of always there on the ready. Lots of both group meetings as well as individual phone calls. There was a lot going on for us at that time. We coincidentally were in the process of raising capital as well, so you know, that added some fun to the whole mix. You know, I'd say, you know, to Fred's point on the board meetings themselves, you know, there is one positive aspect, which is, you know, we weren't always able to get everyone together in the same physical room every time. And so in some ways this is, and we've seen this within the company as well, it plays a bit of a leveling of the playing field. Everyone's on the same, you know, on the same page. It's forced us to be a little bit, I'd say a little bit better and more disciplined about getting more thoughtful, in-depth materials out ahead of time, and then, you know, I can follow up with each person individually, et cetera. So, you know, I think it's evolved and changed, but I don't know if it's like this with every board and investors, but I've been lucky in that my board is always there at the ready whenever, you know, ready to take a text message or a phone call or an email kind of at a moment's notice and jump on the phone and talk something through, which is, I think, for me, the most valuable part of the relationship.
I mean, you're talking about a very volatile year, and you also mentioned fundraising. Of course, Quizlet did close that $30 million Series C round earlier this year. You're now valued, I think, at $1 billion, but you don't want to be called a unicorn, but you are a unicorn. USB didn't actually lead this round, as I understand it. General Atlantic did. Tell me about that sort of ebbing and flowing dynamic. How are you, speaking to you, Matt, directly, thinking about all of your investor stakeholders? Do you feel like the dynamic has changed perhaps when there are now other players in the mix? Do you feel like Fred's, of course, role on the board, but also his line of communication is equally important? I'm wondering how you juggle that as a CEO.
Yeah, no, you know, I think it's as the company grows and evolves and matures, so, you know, so does our needs from a capital markets perspective in terms, you know, you mentioned General Atlantic, Peter Munzig, and other great